There has been a major shakeup in the MLB top 100 prospects, and where do players like Leo DeVries and Kevin McGonagall land on that list? And then we have recovering players like Shane Bieber and Ezekiel Tovar, and where are they at on their recovery track? Those names and more on today's action-packed episode of Locked On Fantasy Baseball.
You are Locked On Fantasy Baseball, your daily fantasy baseball podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, fantasy baseball fanatics, and welcome to the Locked On Fantasy Baseball podcast, brought to you by the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. As always, we're your number one source of fantasy baseball knowledge, and thank you for making us your first listen each and every day. I'm your host, Dominic Martino, here as always with my brother, my co-host, my partner in crime, Matthew Manaea. As you can see, if you're watching on YouTube, and if you aren't already subscribed on YouTube, make sure you hit that bell. It will subscribe to the channel and give you a notification every time we drop a new episode. Or if you're listening on the audio side of things, once again, make sure you're subscribed. And if you're listening on a platform like Apple or Spotify that allows 5-star ratings and reviews, we would truly appreciate it if you do that for us as well. And if you want a little bit more than we offer here in these 30-minute episodes, give us a chance on the Insiders track. Matt and I are going to help get you to those Locked On Fantasy Baseball championships that are, right around the corner for you guys, hopefully. And you know what? You could find the link in the bio wherever you're listening, watching, and it's available on any of our social media platforms. And Matt, we were talking about it off air. I think it was last week at some point, after we did our prospect episode, there was a major shakeup in the top 100. We got a new number one prospect. And then we also got a couple of banged up guys. We got 5 of each for you. And we're going to start off, Matt. Who is the new number one prospect in all of baseball?
It's Leo DeVries, funny enough. And I actually had to learn how to say this guy's name, because I could not say it no matter how hard I tried.
It was tough.
DeVries is actually like a real stud too. He kind of has it all in a lot of ways. He has speed, he has power, plate discipline. Even though you don't see it in the average in his stats, but sometimes the stat sheet doesn't really tell the whole story. He kind of has it all. So far this season at 25, at age 18 years old, 255 at bats, 39 runs, 15 doubles, 4 triples, 6 bombs, 39 ribs, 6 stolen bases, 44 walks to 61 strikeouts, batting ugly 247. But again, it's not telling the whole story. And you kind of look at like what like his profile is, right? So, excuse me there. So he has a game power 25 out of 55, but I think that's going to improve with age. And I think we're going to see a lot come in with that. But 45 raw power out of 60 raw power, so that tells you, hey, there actually is a power in that bat. It's just not really showing off in games. Speed of 40, which is absolutely fantastic. And he's a great fielder, which is really good. And why I mentioned fielding is that's what keeps you out on the field and playing as a young rook. And that's kind of the key part. So I think DeVries is going to be somebody that is going to be an incredible player once he finally makes it to the bigs. Now, the question is, are we caring about him for redraft leagues and such? Absolutely not. The reason why we're mentioning him is more for like a dynasty or a keeper league. If where maybe that's a guy you want to stash at the end of the season, that might be a player that breaks camp. Everywhere I see, he's probably more of a 26, 27 kind of, call up, but who knows? Anything can happen the way everybody's trying to, get these players up into the bigs. At some point, there could be a September call up, but I doubt it. In all honesty, I think next year is the year we see this. But DeVries is somebody that you need to be paying attention to, because if he does, thrust himself like, I don't know, like Kurtz and Caglione, the mobster himself, then that is where you might want to start paying attention to DeVries. So pay attention, keep him in the back of your mind. He's not a guy I'm stashing this year in redraft leagues, but in the dynasty and keeper era, he's a guy I'm truly paying attention to.
Yeah, Matt, great take on the kid here. And then once again, if you guys are playing on Yahoo, where, Matt and I played most of our leagues, he goes by Leo Dallas DeVries. I'll spell that out for you guys. It's LeoDallasDevries. Once again, it's Leo or Leo Dallas DeVries. Kid is the number one prospect for a reason, Matt. You did a great job breaking him down there. I don't think the Padres are going to waste him this year. I think they'll keep him for the extra eligibility going into next year. I mean, there's a chance that, he pushes their hand, but right now, I think he's still getting his rhythm. Young player, 18 years old, just getting used to what it's like to play any Major League Baseball. So, you know what? I think he's still a bit away. Matt, like you said, more dynasty purposes, keeper kind of leagues. Those are the names where you want to pay attention. And then again, like we did last week, we're kind of switching up a little bit how we do the prospect, episode. Some of these guys will be stashes. Some of these guys will be more of next year, keeper dynasty, because, at this point, some of you guys might be out of it, a little bit focused on football and just listening for the keeper dynasty aspect. So we want to keep you guys, entertained on that end as well. Matt, great job breaking down Leo DeVries. Let's move on to the next guy. New number 3 prospect in all of baseball. It is Kevin McGonagall, shortstop for the Detroit Tigers. Now, this kid's been one of the biggest risers in all of baseball this year, and for good reason. He has mashed in all 3 years he's been in the minors. This year, he's up to 42 games played, hitting .358, 38 runs, 21 doubles, 7 bombs, 39 RBIs, 26 walks to 20 strikeouts, and 3 steals. Now, this kid is got like the Jose Altuve in him. Not a big guy, 5'10", 187, but he could hit for some pop. Wouldn't be surprised if he, got 25, home run power. But the batting average, the hit tool, the kid has a solid eye, knows how to take a walk, knows how to hit the ball to the other side of the field, and doesn't mind just hitting the single when he needs to. So you're going to get a kid that has some pop, great batting average, and then that Tigers lineup is deadly. Right now he is still down in high A. I don't know if the Tigers do it for McGonagall this year, but if he's out there in any keeper dynasty leagues, I mean, if you keep half your roster or more, I'd say he's a guy you might want to look into. If it's less than that, probably not. But hitting .372 since he's gotten to high A over that 36 games, all the home runs have come over that time. He's just been really, really good this year. And, I love the profile of him. Kind of not really a do-it-all. He's not really going to steal you a bunch of bags. if his high in the bigs is like 10 steals, that wouldn't shock me. But good power, great eye, going to be a 300 hitter, a 280, 300 hitter. But he's going to be really good once he gets the call. Once again, that's Kevin McGonagall, Detroit Tigers prospect, now the number 3 prospect in all of baseball.
Yeah, I mean, well said, Dom. In all honesty, I really don't have much to add. You really just covered them all. Great prospect.
One of my boys.
Yeah. Again, I'm there with you. I don't think that he's going to get the call this year, but again, another name, if they somehow thrust himself, you got to pay attention to. Let's move on. Let's talk about JJ Wertholdt, which I keep wanting to say JJ Wentworth. 877 cash now, not a sponsor, but hey, it's stuck in the head. But Wertholdt is a really good prospect. A guy that has a lot of upside, in all honesty. He's 22 years old. I think him and the St. Louis Cardinals are, still a year apart, but another name you need to pay attention to. 40 grade hit tool out of 60, 35 out of 50 power, game power, 45 out of 50 raw power, speed is 50 out of 50, and fielding is 40 out of 50. He has a really good glove. It's going to be interesting if he does get the call. He might be a guy that, if anything, does get a September call up, because I think next year's the year where he should be up. And he's having a good season, 223 at-bats, 39 runs, 14 doubles, a triple, 7 bombs, 34 ribs, 14 stolen bases, batting .300, 44 walks to 40 strikeouts. Just like doing his thing in those regards. And plus the OPS is ridiculous at 892. I like what he's doing. I just want to see a little bit more. I want to see if that power can come to fruition. That they're projecting and things like that, but the speed is definitely there. He definitely could steal a base for sure. So let's just see what this kid could do. Pay attention. If he starts going on a tear, there is a world in a way where, hey, St. Louis is at a point where, hey, we need to see what we have, because our team is so bad that I don't even know if people are showing up for the games anymore. So Wertholdt is somebody you need to pay attention to.
Yeah, before I jump in and give my take on JJ, and then we got a great Arizona Diamond prospect in Ryan Waldschmidt, and then we finally get to talk about some Shane Bieber, who is hopefully on his way back. We got those names and more coming up next. And all right, if you are running a business, you know that every missed call is money left on the table. Think about the last time you had a service emergency like a pipe burst. If the first plumber didn't answer, did you wait? No, come on, we don't wait. You call the next one. That's why having a reliable business line is so important, and that's why you need Open Phone. Open Phone is the #1 business system that helps you streamline and scale your customer communication all from an app on your phone or computer. Did you juggle 2 phones just to keep business and personal calls separate? Open Phone solves that instantly. Your whole team can share one number and respond to customers like a shared inbox. No more who's handling this, and the AI agent handles all after call hours, answers common questions, and captures leads so you never miss a customer again. And now Open Phone is offering Locked On Fantasy Baseball show listeners 20% off your first 6 months at openphone.com/lockedonmlb. And that's openphone.com/lockedonmlb. And if you have existing numbers with another phone service, Open Phone will port them over at no extra charge. Open Phone, no missed calls, no missed customers.
Mm-hmm.
And all right, guys, if you want a little bit more than we offer here in these 30-minute episodes, and you're on like that verge of, winning your fantasy baseball championship, and you just need that little thing that's going to put you over the edge, listen, you're not going to find it on your waiver wire. You're going to find it in the Insider's Track with Matt and I. Listen, we give you those instant prospect no qualifications. So listen, if DeVries or McGonagall or Wertholdt, any of those guys get called up, you're going to know before anybody else in your league. And listen, when we do our waiver wire ranking episodes, which we do twice a week, we're going to rank those guys for you and tell you why, you should be prioritizing them in that order. And you can ask us any questions you need, and once again, that's going to be on the Insider's Track. You're going to find the link in the bio wherever you're listening, watching, and it's available on any of our social media platforms. And all right, Matt, unfortunately I do have to keep talking here. Let's talk about Wertholdt, right? Matt, you did a great job breaking him down, but he's been like one of the besides McGonagall, Wertholdt has been one of the biggest risers this year, especially of late. Matt, you read off the stats, kid hitting 300 over 62 games with, the 14 steals, 7 homers, and the 44 walks to, 40 strikeouts. You love to see that from these young prospects. Really shows you that they know what they're doing. And, he's already up in AA. So, he's getting a little bit closer. Matt, great breakdown, though. I think it just depends on what the Cardinals want to do here. If they want to see what they got, what Wertholdt comes up. And, is an interesting name for a fantasy baseball team, especially if you need some average steals. And he's got sneaky pop, too. So it's going to be interesting if Wertholdt does get the call. But all right, Matt, you know what? I'm going to switch it up. I'm going to leave you your boy, even though I love him, too. I almost picked him up in the league that we're in together where you picked him up. But I actually went with McGonagall, so I'll take it. But let's talk about Bryce Matthews, Houston Astros prospect. Another big riser, man. I want to just talk about some guys that really weren't on, the big time radar coming into the season that have been just performing really, really well of late and this season in general. And Bryce Matthews, middle infield prospect for the Houston Astros, has been doing just that. And he's been doing it at AAA, which, is arguably the hardest level. AA, is arguably tougher, but that's open for debate. But Matthews is hitting over 71 games. He's hitting 280. 51 runs, 12 doubles, 5 triples, 10 homers, 39 RBIs, 50 walks, 95 strikeouts, and 24 steals. So you want to kind of talk about a guy that's got really a little bit of everything. I think he's got more speed than power, but another guy that can hit a home run when he needs to. The hit tool, I wouldn't say it's as strong as, DeVries, a McGonagall, or a Wertholdt, but, Bryce Matthews, could be like a 250, 260 guy that gives you, 20-ish home runs, 30, 40 steals maybe in a good year. But that's like the ceiling. It depends on, how he continues to develop. But he looks like he's doing a really good job. And at 23 years old, Houston does need some help. So this is a guy I could see getting a cup of coffee. The age is about right. The league is about right, already up in AAA. And I just think Houston is kind of just going to want to see what they have going into next year, because maybe they want to trade one of these kids or something like that. But Bryce Matthews, middle infield prospect, Houston Astros, definitely a name to keep on the radar. And he's actually made the top 100. He wasn't on the top 100 prior to the update. He's up to the 98th prospect in all of the MLB.
Yeah, great call. He's definitely somebody that's probably, on the horizon, just based off of, like what you said, the Houston Astros, I think probably are going to, full send and dump with, the way they're just playing. So, we could see that and just see what they got in, Cam and Matthews. So great job there. Let's move on. let's talk about Mr. Ryan Waldschmidt. Another name that's as long as 40 syllables on this show. And Waldschmidt is a Arizona Diamondbacks prospect, and he's actually really good. Across A+ and AA this year, he's been killing it. 280 at bats, 65 runs, 16 doubles, 2 triples, 10 bombs, 49 ribs, 13 stolen bases, 59 walks to 61 strikeouts, batting 268, an OBP of 410, a slug of 446, and an OPS of 856. On top of that, you look at his profile and how he's being, graded in things. Hit tool of 30 out of 40, game power 30 out of 55, raw power 55 out of 60, speed 60 out of 60, and he can even field. This is all good things. Look, the kid crushes the ball when he makes contact. He just needs to show it off more in game and actually get a little bit more lift on that bad boy. He's got speed out the wazoo, which is great, and I think that we're going to see a lot of him. The other thing is when does he get the call? He was drafted, in the 2024 draft, the 31st overall in the first round, but it's been just making his way up draft boards and prospect rankings. And I think it's somebody that is going to start, really being a difference maker. There is a chance he pushes himself into the bigs, just one, based off of, where I think the Diamondbacks stand. Two, I think that he's at the prime age where, hey, there's a September call up and this could make a difference for your fantasy leagues. So what can I expect from him if he does get the call this year in September? Definitely a little bit of pop, definitely some speed. And, the way he walks and handles his strikeout situations, I think he's going to be valuable in both platforms of roto and points as long as he's able to maintain that. Kid's going to be an interesting ad come the end of the season.
Yeah, Matt, good take on Waldschmidt. It's so funny. They had Goldschmidt, now they got Waldschmidt. And listen, he could be, a big interesting name over there. The Diamondbacks have done a pretty good job with their prospects over there. Corbin Carroll. I mean, Jordan Lawler, TBD on him. He hasn't had a hot start in his time in the bigs, but they do a pretty good job over there. And Waldschmidt is no exception. Fast for a big dude, like Matt was saying, 6'2", 205, but definitely could steal you a bag. He's already, he's been moved up to AA recently, and he already has 3 steals through 12 games and also has 8 walks through 12 games in AA. Very impressive young athlete here in Ryan Waldschmidt. Matt, good breakdown. So I'm really not going to add too much else here. Let's kind of get into the injured guys. Let's talk some Shane Bieber, man. It's been a real interesting time here for Shane Bieber on his men. There's been a couple of setbacks, but I still think Shane Bieber could be somebody that could be interesting. Look at Woodruff. Matt and I told you Woodruff. I know a lot of the guys in the industry didn't really think Woodruff was going to come back and be interesting at all, but dude, he came back 6 innings, 8 strikeouts, was very good in his first start, and was good in the minors as well. And Bieber, faced minor league hitters over the weekend. Was working his way back. It looks like, I would say early August, sounds about right for where he's going. He's going to need a bunch of rehab assignments. I'd say at least 3 or 4. I'd say if he gets out there next week on a rehab assignment, like early mid-August, kind of sounds about right for when Shane Bieber could be back. But the whole thing is, if you get a guy like Bieber and he's even 75% of how good he was the last time we saw him, that's going to be very, very useful. Because I know if you waited for Brandon Woodruff and you just got him back, you're breathing a sigh of relief, especially a guy like me who lost Corbin Burns and Cole Reagans. So, it feels good to, get some help back. And then Shane Bieber, last time he was healthy in 2024, it was only 2 starts, but he looked like vintage Shane Bieber, man. The velocity was back up. It was 12 innings over those 2 starts, 20 strikeouts, an 0.91 whip, didn't give up an earned run. So like I said, if we can even get 75% of that, or even close to the 2022 Shane Bieber, which was 200 innings, 198 strikeouts, a 2.88 ERA, and a 104 whip, I'll take it all day long. He's definitely somebody I think we should be stashing, and he's 33% owned on Yahoo at the moment.
Yeah, no, he's a stash 100%. I mean, I think he's going to, return to form. It might not be right off the bat, so you're going to have to be patient. But I think come playoff time when it actually matters, Bieber's going to be there to perform, and he's going to be just great all around for us. So just, he's a guy you got to remember coming off Tommy John and hasn't pitched in over a year and a half. You're going to have to be patient with. But, when you're in a position to stash a guy like this, you're also in a position to, be patient. So Shane Bieber is somebody we're going to be watching closely. But coming up next, we got to finish these guys of being rounded out in terms of who we need to stash off that's injured right now. And I'll just give you a little preview. Ezekiel Tovar and Tony Gonsolin, are we actually stashing them, or how do we feel coming up next? Summer sports are in full swing, whether you're into when you're all about baseball under the lights, golf on the green, or high stakes soccer action. FanDuel is the best way to make every game even more exciting. You're already following the action. Why not make it a little bit more thrilling? With FanDuel, you can get in the game while your friends are getting sunburn at the beach. I've been using FanDuel to track my favorite matchups and the app to keep it fresh and new. Daily promotions, fun way to bet. It's easy to use, fast payouts, and make even regular seasons even feel like a must watch. Whether I'm placing a same game parlay or watching a bet ride in the ninth, FanDuel makes it even easier, just like make it a part of the action. New to FanDuel, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. Open the FanDuel app today or visit FanDuel.com/locked on to get started today. All right, so we left off with Shane Bieber, and now I'm going to bring in Mr. Ezekiel Tovar, who I previewed right before the break. And Tovar, unfortunately, went down with an oblique injury and just, has been out since God knows how long at this point. It's been pretty rough. Now, he's due back, in 3 days, air quotes. It is what it is. For me, like if Tovar is out there, I'm going to go out and stash him just with the upside. Honestly, I feel like I'm just chasing, 2024 for those regards. Like that season was kind of like absolutely incredible with the 26 home runs and batting 269 and just what we all hoped and expected from Tovar. This year was kind of underwhelming in those regards. I mean, you look at just the doubles pace, the power pace, even the stolen bases, nothing really was super, super, overwhelming or even alluding to the fact that, hey, he's going to come out and repeat his 2024 outing. Now, I will say this, under the hood, things are a little bit better than what we saw on the field on the stat sheets. You had an X over 362, an expected batting average of 303, expected slug of 500, average exit velocity was at 90.3, barreling 10% of the time, creating hard contact 44% of the time. Launch angle was beautiful. It looked like he was just chasing and things like that. And I think this oblique injury was around and was more of an issue longer than we were expecting or having insight to. So with Tovar, he's worth a stash, but not a high priority and not a guy I'm going to give a long leash to. So he doesn't get going within the first week and a half that I own him after returning. I'm probably not going to hesitate to drop him, but he's a name that carries some upside that I want to have a piece of if he just hits the ground running.
Matt, great take on Tovar there. I'm going to just add my little 2 cents to it. I think one of two things are going to happen here with Ezekiel Tovar of the Colorado Rockies. I think he comes back and he figures it out, and he's going to just be somebody that everyone's going to be interested going into fantasy next year because he's going to have a hot finish to the season. Because, Matt, you talked about all the underlying stuff. This kid was a former top-end prospect that has a lot going for him, especially playing in Coors, right? So if that happens, like I said, everyone's going to want him next year because he's going to have a hot finish to the season. But the other hand, which I think is better for us fantasy players that really, are in the inside of it, if you're in here listening at 23 minutes in, you probably are a fantasy baseball fanatic like Matt and I think Tovar could be one of the biggest sleepers going into next year. I think this kid, if he's, still a little bit banged up, doesn't get healthy, they make him play hurt or anything like that, he'll be somebody I'll take at the end of all my drafts. Because I think this kid is still going to be really, really good. So as for now, if you're listening, I'd stash Tovar. If you have the IL spot, he's 47% owned on Yahoo. I think there's a lot of upside here, as Matt was speaking to. Power, speed, batting average. He plays in Coors. The counting stats not going to be great on this team, but, Tovar is still going to be an impact bat at some point. That's still my belief. So stash him if you can. Let's move on to this next guy, though. This is a little bit of a tougher one. Let's talk some Tony Gonsolin. The reason I put him on this episode is because I think there's going to be a trade. I'd almost bet a lot of money on that there's going to be a trade sometime here with the Dodgers, right? And I think they're going to have to move themselves a starting pitcher. I think they're going to have to, move on from someone. And then if Tony Gonsolin gets to go to another team and, gets unleashed, we've seen it. The Dodgers like to dodger. Tony Gonsolin gets babied. They only let him throw 4 or 5 innings at a time. I think he's only pitched 6 innings once or twice this whole season so far through his 7 starts. He hasn't been very good, but he's a talented, pitcher who, can get good results. Only 7% owned on Yahoo. So this is for you guys that are playing like NL onlys, those deeper leagues, those leagues where there's nothing out there on the waiver wire. Right now, he's dealing with a bit of a shoulder injury. There's no firm return date from him. I know he's been, throwing a little bit, working out. Hasn't thrown in like bullpen sessions or anything like that. But, I know we get a lot of guys here playing deep leagues and stuff like that. So Tony Gonsolin is somewhat of a name, for your deep league players, your 15s, your NL only, something like that. Kind of hoping on a trade here in LA that could shake things up, give him a rotation spot, or send him somewhere we can pitch.
Yeah, I mean, let's just hope and pray that he does get traded. Otherwise he's just going to get dodged. I feel like he's like the Kenta Maeda of.
Yeah. I was trying to remember the name, Matt, and I couldn't do it for the life of me. Thank you. That's the exact guy. When I say the Dodgers, that's who I think of. Perfect, Matt. Thank you.
Yeah, it's either him or Ross Stripling. Like, I mean, I can name those are the two pitchers.
Another good one. That's another good one.
Like, those are the two names you like. Set them free. But Gonsolin does have all the talent. He also just has a hint of Alberto Mondesi where he just can't stay healthy either, and it really just kind of just sucks. But we'll see. I mean, when he's on the field, he does produce. I mean, on the mound, and I kind of want a piece of that. I want to see if he could kind of bring it back. So let's see what the trade deadline brings. Let's see if he can stay healthy and get back on that mound this season. Let's move on. So about a low priority name, and that's Nestor Cortes. No longer nasty Cortes, more like nasty to look at Cortes. He has not been impressive, dealing with an elbow injury that put him on the IL, and he is due back on the 21st of July. In terms of where I'm at with Nestor, I'm in low priority. He's more of a deep league kind of stash, this kind of type deal, because he's definitely out there and things like that. He is, worth a shot. In shower leagues, anything like 12 and lower, I am not even going to whiff at him until he's actually back. He is not taking up an IL spot. I can think of like 50 other names that I'd rather have on my IL spot than Nestor Cortes, but he's a guy that, could post some, high upside if he is healthy. That's the kind of key thing. You're chasing the good old Yankee days. You're chasing, when Nestor was good. It's been tough sledding the last couple of years, and I want to see if he can kind of return. Again, deep league stash, otherwise just a watch list guy for the rest of the season.
Damn, Matt, the haterade is legitimate over there for Nasty Nestor. I'm still calling him Nasty Nestor. I don't care what anybody says. That was my boy. He had a really good run with
Nasty to look at.
But listen, he had a pretty solid year in 2024. Listen, he had a 3.77 ERA, 30 starts, 174 innings, 162 strikeouts, and a 1.15 WHIP. I loved taking Nestor at the end of, if you were in a deep league, end of the draft kind of pick. I loved taking him there. Unfortunately, he got hurt at the beginning of the year, and he's on his way back. He had his first rehab start. It was 3 scoreless innings, 4 strikeouts, gave up 1 hit, no walks. The hit was a single at that. So he's doing okay so far. He might not be the best, but if he can pitch to a high 3s ERA with around a K per 9 and good control, which Nasty Nestor has been good at his whole career, after he got out of Baltimore and got everything fixed up mechanics-wise, like I said, a 1.15 WHIP through 174 innings in 2024, the control still should be somewhat there, and he looked good in his first rehab start. And Nestor Cortes is 10% owned on Yahoo, so if you play in a league where there's no pitching out there and you're just looking for a dart throw stash, that's where I take Nestor. I'm not prioritizing him over some bigger names, but I know there's some guys out there in deep leagues. I'm in some leagues where there's just no pitching out there at all, and Nasty Nestor could potentially be somebody that could help. But let's move on to our last guy. I know we've been talking about him a little bit on these shows lately, but we're monitoring guys that are close this time of year, so it's kind of more of an update, kind of thing here with Sean Manaea. And he's actually going to be back Sunday, so he's going to piggyback Clay Holmes on Sunday. And if that goes well, that's if everything goes well, as we're recording here today. He's throwing his last rehab start here on Tuesday. So let's hope everything goes well for Manaea. Interesting name. Had a pretty good year last year, 41% owned, still with those Mets, and the Mets are, Mets are all right. You can win a game or two there. But Manaea, I'm trying to grab his rehab starts rehab stint stats, if you bear with me a second. So far he's actually been a bit mediocre down there in the minors. 6 ERA through 4 starts, 15 innings, 18 strikeouts, a 1.53 WHIP. But what I do like to see, it's only 4 walks. So only 4 walks is nice, but 19 hits in 15 innings is a lot. So, I kind of think he can get that control down a little bit better and stop giving up so many hits. Could get this figured out. 41% owned is actually kind of where I think Manaea should be at. Not rushing out there to add him, but you know what? Once again, those deeper leagues, I know it gets tough. Those NL onlys, if he's out there by chance, those 15s. If you need something going into Sunday, listen. If you need strikeouts, he could help you there. I wouldn't count on the ERA or WHIP being great in that first one. And who is it against? The Royals. So, and the Royals are a tough team, man. Bobby Witt, Pasquantino over there will smack you around if you're not paying attention.
Yeah, I mean, I like Manaea. I think last year was kind of like legitimate. Things kind of fell into place for him. This year, dealing with the elbow, that's the scary part. Like we've seen where, players come back from an elbow injury and decided not to get the TEJ. And then, after like 2 starts, they're on the IL. Or they're just not looking good and they just ride it out and then you find out they get the TEJ in the off season. Like these are things in the possibilities, but I'm going to add him honestly in 12 and higher. Even in a 12-man league, just based off of the fact that I just want a little bit of upside. And he does have it. If he could pose it and say, hey, like I'm reclaiming my rotation spot, I'm going to start every single week, then he's a guy that I want on my team because I want to see the upside. We'll see. But again, a guy that's not going to have a long leash either. 2-3 starts. If we can't get it together by then he's out. But that's 3 weeks at most. So Sean Manaea is a guy that I feel you need to stash even in a 12-man league. But thank you guys for everything today and hanging out with us. We'll be back tomorrow, of course, because we're here 5 days a week. And, do us a favor. If you want a little bit more than we offer in this 30-minute podcast, check us out on the Insider Track. You'll get way more features and things like that. And make sure to leave us a 5-star rating and review on Apple or Spotify. And make sure to hit that subscribe button on YouTube. And when you're done, check out our boy Sully over at Locked On MLB, who gives great real MLB coverage. With that being said, guys, have a great rest of your day. Peace.
See ya.